Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill. Got another video for today. This is a continuation of my test server videos. This is episode 36 on test server, a part of Metal Part 2, and it actually has a release date now. It's going to be this Thursday. We'll kind of touch on that in a second, because we just found that Sunday night. But regardless of that, I do plan on still having my Everything You Need to Know video, which will probably come out tomorrow, ideally, which will have, stuff like max skill points, augments, about the OP item, artifacts, updates, everything like that. So this is going to be my open world video, doing some open world missions as well as the weekly bounty. So now we're in Thanagar. Now, obviously, same thing again in terms of my, background knowledge of DC. It's very minimal. So you guys in the comment section can state if this is similar to what Thanagar is like. I've known nothing about the Phoenix Cannon. To me, with this DLC, I was half expecting to fight like the Batman Who Laughs. The way I thought like Metal Part 1 and Metal Part 2 would kind of line up would be, well, we had the Batman Who Laughs as a villain in the first one. The second one is when we defeat him as like the final boss, but that seemed to be nothing like that this DLC. From the Phoenix Cannon raid, about like the cannon, I guess is the Batman Who Laughs minions attacking Earth with the Phoenix Cannon with Thanagar, and then so I don't know if that's like a Metal Part 3 coming up that we actually fight the Batman Who Laughs, because I'm sure at some point we have to fight him as a boss. But my impression was this was just like a Metal Part 1 and Part 2, but I guess not. So we're in Thanagar now, just going through the open missions. Thanagar is actually quite large. It's a pretty big map. So we have in terms of the missions, we have the 3 daily missions. There's 2 weekly bounties. Not so much bounties, but like 2 weekly missions for 8 marks. What it is the first one is about just doing the missions. Like in the past, it used to be missions where you did all the dailies and then you progressed like 1 out of 4, basically. So I guess the same thing with like the Teen Titans, like helping out Nightwing. Same thing, after you help out Nightwing for a certain amount of days, you get to do his mission, which gives you another 8 marks. So the same concept as that, as a weekly. The other weekly is the actual bounty. So there's no farm 82 vortexes, or there's no kill 300 Thanagarn soldiers, nothing like that. So you don't have to worry about that this DLC. It's just basically kill the bounty, which will be at the end of this video clip, and then the rest is just kind of weekly missions. So the other mission as well, to start off with, you saw that the 3 source marks, this is like exploring Thanagar, so I guess they just want to kind of highlight the effort they put into this map, as opposed to just brushing it aside. So they have these new booster. Is it Booster Gold? Yeah, I think it's Booster Gold. Where his kind of like terminal missions, like from Metro and Gotham. So you're basically just going around the map, visiting everything. But once again, people can speak to its authenticity in terms of like a comic origins in the background. So going back on, there's a couple things I want to touch in this video. The first one's going to be the release date, and then kind of like the release date ties into the main topic of this video, which will be kind of like the test server population disparity, which is always really frustrating. So the thing with when this came out, we had no idea what the release date. So when they do like the live stream, if you follow the DCUO Twitter, which I don't, but I do follow the Twitter because they usually post like graphical images of previews for the DLC, the same thing they do with Metal. All my thumbnails are based on those little DCUO Twitter releases. Just I'm not like Torkaruma. I'm not spending a whole bunch of time on my thumbnails. I'm just getting something quick and to the point. But that leads into, they didn't even release anything like that with Metal Part 2. They still haven't. So there's no background of Thanagar. There's no any kind of graphical images relating to Part 2. So they hadn't spoke of what changes were going to be coming out on test server. I think they've done one release test server update. And now we found out Sunday on a tweet about Black Friday saying stock up for the DLC that comes out December 5th, which is this Thursday, which is 4 days from now, because this video is going up on Monday. So it's like, what? There's been nothing in game. All of a sudden now it's like, oh yeah, the DLC is coming out Friday. So it's like, what? Are you kidding me? So obviously, it's been on test server for a little bit, but they kind of staggered the release. So basically, right away, we got the duo and the alert, and then the raids came the weekend after. But the problem is when the raids came the weekend after, they're completely bugged to all shit and were barely playable, and they just left it like that for the weekend, saying like our bad. And then they fixed some of the bugs the next week, like this past week. I think there was a test server update on Wednesday. So then they fix those bugs, and then they just go right back to saying, just continue testing. So it's like, what? To me, I honestly find it comical. Like, so the major DLC release episode, obviously they had an idea about the date, but then they just release it to us like 4 days on that tweet. There's like nothing official. There's no like backstory to it. There's no like lead up to it. They like this stuff on test server. The artifacts are in a good place. Batuba spent a lot of time on the artifacts, so I think they're in a pretty good spot. There might be some fine tuning that has to come on live server, but that's typical with artifacts, just because it's very hard to test certain things with these artifacts. Like the finisher artifact, I'll bring it more up in my next video, but the finisher artifact it's too hard to test. I can't get groups, which I'll talk about in a moment. But the sparring targets, after 30 seconds of rotation, they're already at 35%, and the Mort card is procced. So it's like, well, now I have to wait another a few minutes for the health of the sparring target to go back up again just before I can start parsing. So it's like I'm not realistically getting to 70 stacks. I don't even think I'm getting to 30 stacks. So like you can't properly test that artifact. The other issue is with the strategist card is for the might dot tick. So basically the strategist card is basically you get like passive damage. So it is higher than the Grim. You just get like a pass on basically on a crit of damage. You have a chance to proc a dot. But the problem is on the might side, the strategist proc does not show up in it shows up in the combat log, but it does not show up in the analyzer. So I have no clue how much damage I'm getting. I would have to do a parser rotation, just guess, do with and without, and then try to match up the critical passives to make sure they're both similar parses. The precision side shows up. It shows up in the combat log analyzer. I can know exactly how much damage I'm getting from the strategist card running over raid, and that's the information you need to know. And I guess they don't have the technology at the moment, Batuba said, that to be able to show us that, which is odd because it shows up for other stuff. Like usually if it shows up in the combat log, it always shows up in the analyzer, so I can show you guys saying, hey, this is how much damage this does. With the strategist card for might DPSing, there's no clue. You'll have no idea. You'll just assume that it's going to be good getting it to 200. Like I've done basic testing on 60 6 or 7 parsers worth to give an idea. But at the same time, that's not over the length of a raid. I would love to be able to do raids saying, okay, this is how much damage I got. I can do that with the Gemini proc. So it's I can run a raid and show you guys, hey, this is how much damage I got from the Gemini proc, and then compare that to the strategist card. But I can't do that with my DPS because of the stupid combat log. So that's a little bit frustrating. The Gem of Horus, I think it's going to be a good artifact for Prec DPSing, specifically for gadgets. The issue is it's going to be a little bit awkward, especially for Fleur Shot, just because it's the whole concept of interrupting your combo every 5 seconds to hit Gem of Horus, to hit the Town Strike, is going to interfere a lot, especially with the Relentless Neck mod. So you lose that precision that you would have normally, always that higher precision to use the Talon Strike. So I think in certain situations it's going to be good, but it's going to be situational. It's not going to be you have to run this, say the Venomer Dispenser or and even on single target. Yes, it does more damage than Tornado Pull, but unless it crits. So if Tornado Pull is consistently critting for you, then it's going to do more damage. Plus you can't nerf all your artifacts to run you can't run the Gem of Horus and the transformation if you want the crit and the Venomer Dispenser. You're going to lose a lot of prec, and you got to have substitute. Other than that, the Page of Destiny is really good for healing. So I'm kind of getting sidetracked in this commentary, talking about the artifacts. But so let's get back on track here. So the artifacts are in a pretty good spot. The Duo and the Alert are pretty good spots. The Alert kind of came out bouncing wise, difficulty wise, it's okay. The Duo, I think they shed some time on it, so that should be okay. But the issue is that the raids were completely bugged to all shit when they came out. You couldn't even complete the raids because the doors wouldn't even open again. So if you failed, it was a wipe. And the other is that there's no difficulty passing done in Elite. So I guess they're just going to test it on live, because now the raids, the DLC is coming out in 4 days, so there's obviously no time to do a test server update saying, oh yeah, hey, do some test server testing a day before, 24 hours before the DLC comes out. They're not going to bother with that anymore. And you can see if you follow the forums on the test server threads, the devs have really gone silent the past, like this weekend and a little bit before that, in terms of the feedback for the developers that are running the raids. So I don't know what the hell is going on. There's no difficulty path. This DLC is going to be completely live tested. What I mean by that is that, anything that's wrong with this DLC, you can't blame the testers. Well, you can and cannot at the same time. But there's hardly no communication from the developers in terms of the raids. I'm not saying there's been a lot of feedback with the artifacts. There's been good feedback with the duel and the alert, but there's been really, really shitty feedback with the raids, like non-existent feedback, and we have no idea what's going on and what they're going to look like. I think Into the Dark Multiverse was beaten in Elite, but at the same time, like the second boss, where you fight the giant chicken monster, that's like completely piss easy. Even in regular, like it's a joke. It's like what, like the lava forges aren't tuned, like the lava, no, not lava forge, embers. Forge embers. The forge embers aren't tuned, so it's like, are they supposed to be doing damage? Are they not supposed to be doing damage? So that completely can change things. Is there supposed to be a damage check in Elite like there is, or there's not supposed to be a damage check after 5 phases? Like, we don't know. The devs haven't told us jack shit. I think it's Quintoxic or what's the developer that's actually in charge of that? Let me just check on that. Because with the raids, like Sharon's doing the alert. I think Jack Frost is doing the duo. Red 5 is doing the open world. Bill Barge is the open world as well. Yeah, so Into the Dark Multiverse was T Lantern, which I don't have much experience with him. And then the Phoenix Cannon raid was Q Toxic, which I've seen those names around before, but I don't have much experience with them in terms of how they do raids. Jack Frost and Sharon and Milbarge have been like the primary raiders that have been designing raids for the past few DLCs. But now it's something completely different with these two developers. But their feedback has been garbage. So, like the first feedback they gave, Quintox's feedback hasn't been too bad. He's given us some insight about what his thoughts are for the Phoenix Cannon in terms of what's wrong with like the tethering, stuff like that in Elite. But the other developer for Into the Dark Multiverse hasn't really told anything. Like he's fixed the issues with the doors, but hasn't told us about like any like his thoughts about how the cogs are supposed to work at the end, because like those are completely screwed up. So are you supposed to turn at the same time? You're not supposed to turn at the same time. He hasn't told us anything about what he wants the second boss to look like. I guess he's fixed the card game where that should work properly, which I'll have a guide out for later as well. Probably hopefully have that up Thursday when it comes out. But at the same time, it's just like terrible feedback for the raids. But it's just because they weren't out in time. So normally they have 2 weeks on test to test raids. But this time we only had like a week, or yeah, because this would be the second week because they came out last week. But they're all bugged to shit and they're only fixed Wednesday. So it's like you release them on the Friday saying, here are the raids, have fun. And then they're all broken. You can't even run the lead. The doors aren't opening. There's no difficulty passing done. So it's like, well, what do you want us to do? And then it's like, bye. I'll see you in 4 days. And then he gets back to us like midweek and then nothing happens. And then it's like, surprise, it's out Thursday. So that kind of leads me to the second part of my topic here. And it's just the whole like the concept behind the test server and the whole the test server disparity. So right away, I'm going to say I understand that the PS server can't have a test server. That's more like hardware issues, and not hardware issues, but Sony issues themselves. Because when they do like a test server, like even in the game, like when they do an update to the game for DC, it has to pass certain QAs with Sony because it's on the PlayStation. So that's why it takes a little bit of time, where on the PC server, they don't have to do anything like that. So if this game was like PC only, they could shut the game down. They could do tons of updates like every 24 hours. Doesn't matter. If something was broken, okay, it'll be fixed tomorrow. Like there's no Q&A passing they have to do for Sony for like they have to do on PC. A PC's instant. It doesn't matter. They have full control. So they can never have a PS test server for for the PlayStation. It has to be on PC. So that already hurts because the majority of this population's game is PS players. So then they have to have a PC or laptop at home to be able, and then download, another 20 gig game to be able to test the test server. Then they have to plug in their controllers or use their mouse and keyboard, which they probably aren't used to. So I understand because of that and because of how the community is kind of situated that the test server population is going to be low. I understand that, but at the same time, it is really low. Like throughout this whole video, this is me probably, I think this was like 7 o'clock on like a Wednesday. Wednesday or Thursday, I can't remember when I recorded this footage here, but it was like 7 o'clock Eastern. So it's not, I'm not playing like super late. I'm not playing super early. I'm playing around like a basic time. Most people are going to be like a 9 to 5. They, eat dinner, and then their evening starts at like 7. They go to bed at midnight or whatever. And you'll see in this whole time, this open world, there's only like 2 people. And the server chat, my default chat's up. No one's talking server chat. There's like the population, like no one's on test server. So how are we supposed to test duos and alerts and, God forbid, raids and elite raids when there's no people online? You can't. And then the other thing is you have people that test, but then they don't actually either provide feedback or they don't provide meaningful feedback, what I mean by like actual video. So if they're saying, oh, something doesn't work like this or it should work like this, and they don't actually provide video feedback, which is an issue. So really there's like 3 main people, or maybe 4. Like 4? Usually 4. So it's like myself, it's Penran, who always does videos. GeoForce does a lot of videos from test server. And then there's some of the Platts guys do videos from test servers as well. So you have like 4 or 5 people that have the ability to, like the Platts guys aren't going to upload like little bugs and stuff. They'll upload like raid feedback. Penran does all the little bugs. Like I don't even do that stuff because like I'm not looking for all little tiny bugs. I'm more looking for like general feedback. I do a whole whack of test server videos in terms of artifacts, in terms of like unlisted glitches videos that I always put up. GeoForce does some as well, but so you can't like have that limited to like 3 or 4 players providing video feedback, because that's the most important feedback. Where if you say something doesn't work this way or something's wrong, the devs have to be able to see it, because if they can't see it, they can't know they're replicating it correctly on their internal servers, which don't always correlate to how it actually functions. So if something's broken on on test server or live server, it doesn't always work on their internal servers in terms of replicating it. So that's why if it's a video, they can see, oh, that's how it's working. I can see what's wrong and then change it. But we don't have that. And then each test, like even Justice League Dark, when Justice League Dark came out, or was it? It was Metal Part 1. Sorry, when Metal Part 1. So we had the duo. No, so we had the solo. We had the alert. We had 2 raids. We had 23 artifacts, level like rank 200 breakthroughs, and we had a weapons update. Like holy shit, we have like 6 months worth of stuff where it's like a weapon mastery update, like 23 artifacts worth of 200 rank breakthroughs, and all the DLC content we have to test in 2 weeks. Are you kidding me? Like, how are we expected to provide meaningful feedback when there's so much stuff we have to do and that's so little time? And weapons are still broken. Like Doomspin's way out of line. Like Brawling Haymaker's way out of line. You have other weapon mastery updates that are still weak. Like Flurry Shot didn't really change it. Flurry Shot saw like maybe a 10% reduction or something like that. Where so it's Flurry Shot is still like heads and shoulders above everything else. So like the weapon mastery combat update really didn't change anything meaningful, and then they've just kind of like backshelved that. There's still a bunch of like artifact tuner ranks that really are useless and didn't really change, or ones that are still kind of over-tuned or under-tuned. So it's just, how can they possibly expect us to provide that type of feedback that they need for this DLC? Or when the issues comes out, when it comes, like this was back when the Teen Titans DLC. So when the Teen Titans DLC came out, the whole community was pissed off because like Hive Elite was broken and like Machine Elite was kind of broken. So they're like, oh, the tester's fault because they didn't test. Well, how am I supposed to test? I ran Elite twice this DLC. For the last like week and a half, I've run these 2 raids on Elite like twice, because you need 8 good players, and so you have to communicate with them to try to get it. Because if you just shout like server chat saying, hey, I need 8 players for Elite, you're probably going to get like really subpar like skillful players, so they can't test Elite properly anyway. So it's just everything comes to live testing then. So what I mean by this, and I kind of like where this rant is kind of going, Besides just being like, the Robin Williams rant where I'm kind of hopping around in different places and not staying on, it's not staying properly structured. But they need to be something like some kind of incentive. Like, I'm not going to really go into what the incentive should be because that's going to be obviously if the players decide, but they need more players on test servers so we can actually provide meaningful feedback so we're not stuck live testing everything. Because when you have live testing, that's the same thing. It's like what I went to about the PlayStation console being like QA tested. So if something's really broken in a raid, it's going to be like a week or something before that gets fixed, and they're going to fix a bunch of other stuff, or there's like hot fixes every like 3 or 4 days like there has been in the past DLCs. So I don't want that. I don't want to live test stuff. I want to get like most of the feedback provided on test, and then like the fine tuning on live. Like, we shouldn't be live testing DLCs just because the devs give us shitty feedback on test and give us like unrealistic timelines, and then coupled with the fact that there's no players on test to actually run content. Take care, guys. Thanks for watching.
Destroying the cult's nth metal abomination.